Today I am going to explain such a wonderful psychological horror movie called Heretic 2024. At the beginning of the movie we see two young women, Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes, who are missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, discussing contraception. Sister Barnes brings up a company that sells condoms, sharing her thoughts on how marketing shapes people's beliefs, while Sister Paxton believes the company's claims to be sincere. The two then set out around town, introducing themselves and attempting to spread their faith. During their mission, a group of girls approaches them, asking if they can record a video. As they encircle Sister Paxton, they suddenly run off, leaving her distraught and in tears. Later, the missionaries visit Mr. Reed's home, as he has expressed interest in learning more about Mormonism. As the rain begins to fall, he invites them inside, but the sisters insist that they can only enter if his wife is present. Mr. Reed assures them that his wife is in the kitchen, baking a pie. Just before they step inside, he casually mentions that the walls of the house contain jammers. Once inside, the missionaries engage in conversation with Mr. Reed, who reveals that he has read the Book of Mormon and is well versed in its teachings. As they talk, Barnes shares that she is a convert, explaining that her mother embraced the faith after her father's passing. In contrast, Paxton explains that she was born into the church. The atmosphere shifts when Mr. Reed asks Barnes if she has ever received any signs from her late father. When she responds that she has not, he appears intrigued and briefly glances at a scar on her arm. Meanwhile, Paxton lightheartedly expresses her wish to return as a butterfly after death so she can stay close to her loved ones and bring them comfort. However, the discussion takes a more serious turn when Mr. Reed introduces the subject of polygamy in Mormonism. He explains that although it was once accepted, it is no longer practiced, primarily because the founder had personal motives to justify an affair. The girls try to provide context, but Barnes decides to consult her priest about the matter and gets ready to leave. However, Reed steers the conversation in a different direction by asking about their favorite foods. The girls excitedly respond that they love Wendy's but quickly mention that they prefer not to discuss Taco Bell. Reed then shares his own search for the Wendy's of religions, implying that he believes he has found it. The sisters ask to meet his wife, prompting him to step out of the room. While he is gone, Sister Barnes examines the burning candle and realizes it is scented like blueberry pie. The realization dawns on her: there was never a wife, and the tempting aroma had been artificial all along. When Reed returns, he announces that his wife is ready to meet them. The sisters quickly come up with an excuse, claiming they received a call and need to leave. As Reed walks down the hallway, they desperately try to escape through the front door, only to find it locked. To their horror, their phones display no service. Panicked, they find Mr. Reed in his library and tell him that a nun urgently summoned them back. He motions toward their coats, and as they put them on, Sister Barnes notices her bicycle keys are missing from her pocket, only for Paxton to find them in hers. A chilling realization strikes them: Mr. Reed must have searched their coats while they were distracted and mistakenly switched the keys. The girls ask him to help with the door, but he explains that it is on a timer and won't unlock until morning, suggesting they use the back door instead. He also points out that they don't need to make excuses to leave, referencing the fake phone call Sister Paxton pretended to receive earlier. He reminds them that he had previously mentioned the presence of jammers in the walls, preventing signals from passing through, and states that he always knew the girls were lying. Feeling disconnected, the girls ask to see his wife again, and he once more pretends to go fetch her. However, something inside him makes him stop. He then questions whether they still believe he has a wife, despite the evidence, such as the candle, suggesting otherwise. Drawing a comparison to faith in God, he explains that believing in him was no different. He points out that they chose to believe in him because it brought them comfort and reassurance. He further reveals that the candle labeled blueberry pie was a test, meant to challenge their understanding of what they should and shouldn't believe. At this point, a dilemma arises. There are two doors in the room and the girls express their need to leave. Sister Barnes asks which door leads to freedom, but when she checks both, she is disheartened to find that each one opens into darkness. As they turn to him for guidance, instead of answering directly, he introduces a game of Monopoly, explaining its origins from an older game called The Landlord's Game. He then draws an analogy between major religions, stating that they all branched from one another, Judaism being the foundation, followed by Christianity, Islam, and Mormonism. He then delved into the idea of reiterations, explaining how variations of ideas, songs, and beliefs can distort the original truth. Carefully, he highlighted the commonalities among different religious traditions, leaving the girls both intrigued and unsettled. As his monologue neared its conclusion, he presented them with a choice. On one door he had written belief, and on the other, disbelief, challenging them to select the one that aligned with their personal convictions about God. Paxton, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment, chose the door labeled disbelief, telling Reed she agreed with him simply to end the encounter. However, Barnes, unwavering in her faith, stepped toward the door marked belief, asserting that this moment was about staying true to themselves rather than submitting to Reed's expectations. She acknowledged the inconsistencies in his arguments but insisted that this was a test of their personal convictions, not an exercise in surrendering to external pressure. Though Paxton tried to persuade her otherwise, Barnes remained firm, refusing to abandon her faith for the sake of self-preservation. As the girls carefully opened a door, they found themselves descending into a dimly lit basement, offering a quiet thank you to Mr. Reed for the brief respite. As he shut the door behind them, they began to strategize their escape. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind them. When they turned, they were startled to see a figure draped in a white robe, her face hidden beneath a veil, entering the room. She silently took a seat at a table, holding a lantern in one hand and a blueberry pie in the other. Meanwhile, melodic music drifted from a pipe leading to Reed's library, where he sat meticulously constructing a small wooden house and recording the details of the night's events, carefully noting the exact times each occurrence had taken place. Through the pipe, Reed informed the girls that they were witnessing a divine miracle, revealing that the figure before them was a living prophet of God. The veiled figure slowly removed her covering, exposing a face that was unsettling and disfigured. As she ate the pie, she suddenly collapsed. Reed instructed the girls to check her veins to see if she was still alive, but they confirmed that she had lost consciousness. Just then, the tense silence was broken by the sound of a ringing bell. Positioned at the top of the stairs, Reed left the basement, locked the door behind him, deactivated the timer on the main entrance, and went to investigate the source of the noise. Outside, a man from the church stood waiting, asking whether Reed had seen Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton, as they had failed to return on time. Reed feigned ignorance and engaged him in small talk to divert his attention before shutting the door. Meanwhile, inside the basement, the girls rushed to the door, shouting in unison in hopes of being heard. However, they quickly realized their cries were in vain. Through the small gap beneath the door, Sister Barnes noticed a box of matchsticks lying on a carpet in Reed's room. Working together, they tugged at the carpet until they managed to grab a few matchsticks. With them in hand, they hurried back and attempted to start a fire using stones and the matchsticks, but their efforts were in vain. Out of nowhere, the prophet suddenly appeared behind Sister Paxton, startling them. She described her visions of angels and how the afterlife had felt surreal. Before they could fully grasp her words, Reed returned and led the prophet away to another room. Shortly after, he reappeared, lighting a lantern and speaking of a miracle. As Sister Barnes relayed the prophet's account of the afterlife to him, Reed proceeded to perform a ritual offering. Sister Barnes, however, dismisses the so-called miracle as nothing more than an illusion. She explains to Mr. Reed why she and Sister Paxton never mentioned Taco Bell, revealing that she had nearly died from an E. coli outbreak linked to eating there. Her near-death experience bore a striking resemblance to the prophet's account of the afterlife. When Mr. Reed attempts to discuss the theory of simulation, she openly criticizes it. Before she can say more, he suddenly slashes her throat, insisting that she will come back. After some time, he realizes that Sister Barnes is not returning. He cuts open an old scar on her arm and removes a small metal chip, declaring that she was never a real person, but rather a program that functioned through the chip, and now she is gone. He then begins discussing the butterfly dream theory, which questions whether reality is just an illusion, making one feel as though they are trapped in a dream. However, Sister Paxton quickly points out that she recognizes the metal object as a contraceptive implant. Sister Barnes had chosen this instead of birth control pills due to the nature of her work. The truth of what Reed has done begins to sink in. She informs him that the original prophet had indeed died, but another woman had taken her place, vividly describing the afterlife because she genuinely believed she was about to die. What Reed didn't realize was that this woman had secretly told others, "It's not real." While Sister Barnes and Sister Paxton created a distraction by shouting, the second woman used the opportunity to swap places with the deceased prophet. Sister Paxton accuses Reed of failing in his scheme and attempting to cover it up with different philosophical theories. She then mentions her suspicion that there is a hidden exit in the room. Moving the table aside, she uncovers an opening beneath it. Despite Mr. Reed's warning that she should only enter if she seeks to learn about the one true religion, Sister Paxton chooses to move forward. As she steps inside, she finds herself in a corridor lined with doors. She notices one secured with the lock from her bicycle and quickly retrieves her keys to unlock it.